Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrea, Associate Editor of Audioholics, and I'm here with...
Rob H. We are a day late in our live recording. Schedules with unforeseen problems cropped up yesterday, but we are here. We will be answering all the questions that came in last week. It will be fun. How's it going, Tom?
You've made lots of promises that
I have.
I'm not sure that I am willing to say that we're going to carry out. Yes, we are a day late, but not a dollar short, thanks to our good friend Jason, who has been our listener of the week this week. Came in just under the wire, and I'm not going to say that I purposefully delayed the podcast for a day so I can get a listener of the week, but it did kind of work out that way.
No, that is definitely not the case. But thank you, Jason. I very much appreciate it. We very much appreciate it. Keeps the podcast going.
That's right. And if you want to donate, you can go to the AV Rant website at avrant.com, and there's a buy us a cup of coffee where you can give us a PayPal donation if you like. Help support the podcast, and it is there are a couple people who when they ask questions, they'll like donate and then they'll ask a question and they'll refer to their they'll reply to their donation receipt. I'm like, we will absolutely answer your questions without a donation. That is not a prerequisite for getting your question answered on this podcast. We're just perfectly happy. But thank you. I wanted to say thank you for that. My life has gotten really crazy lately. My father-in-law has been very, very, very ill.
Oh, no.
So that is, he actually, I think it was on my wife's birthday, he fell and broke his hip, which is, and his recovery has been a lot longer than they think. So she's been kind of running around, and that means I'm kind of running around, and therefore I can't always be exactly where I say I'm going to be when I say I'm going to be there, but I am going to have a beer tonight.
It is beer o'clock. It is 2 beers o'clock.
It is from 2 beers o'clock. I brought one for each hand, but I will only open one at a time. So, cheers to all of our listeners and to me.
Very good. And I am assuming that you're just absolutely over the moon that OS 10 Yosemite has been announced, because you've had such good luck with upgrading your Mac OS operating system. I can only imagine you are just waiting with bated breath. I
cannot wait for Yosemite. It's going to be awesome. I've always wanted to see if my computer could move so slow it would go backwards in time. And I figured that if I upgrade it, it'll be just like dial-up again, except with the 386.
Well, I know that I've officially crossed over into being an old man because I've been watching the E3 coverage happening this week, and I'm like, wow, I really don't care. Like like these games look impressive. They look fun, and I'm like, I know I have no time to play them, and they all kind of look like iterations on what we've seen before. I'm like, I am an old man. I wish I were more excited, but I am not.
I am in complete agreement. I cannot tell you how disappointed I am that I am so uninterested in these next generation consoles. I'm like, they came out and everything they talked about, I'm like, nope. I don't need any of that. I'm like.
I am looking forward to Evolve. Evolve is a game I will play because it's from the guys who made Left 4 Dead, and Evolve does look awesome. So.
Yes. Who is that? That's what's their name? Valve, right?
Valve, yeah, and it's the same team that made Left 4 Dead is making Evolve. So come October, hopefully I will actually make good on what I said when Titanfall came out, and actually be around to play with some of our listeners who have given out their gamer tags and that, but yeah, probably don't look for me before October.
I can't do anything until I get a home theater back. I don't even have my PS3 hooked up anymore. And it's just getting further and further away. My parents are like, let's, because those who don't know, that my parents and my autistic brother have moved in with us while they have bought and they're now renovating a house down the street. So a very I love Raymond sort of situation. Everybody loves Raymond. Sort of situation, which is just really nice. My parents are very easy to live with. They're helping to pay for the bills. They're doing a lot of the housework and helping out in many ways. My dad edged the lawn for the very first time. I've lived here for over a year. It's never been edged. I didn't have an edger to begin with, but second of all, I don't really care about edging. That's low priority for me. But he thought it was cool, and it looks great, and I'm very happy with it. But they have particular tastes. So their particular taste means that this renovation, which is going to be pretty small, has ballooned. It keeps getting pushed back. So I'm thinking honestly, my birthday is the beginning of October. I would hope that they would be out of the house by then. I will be happy if they were out of the house by Christmas. But at that point, I'm going to start putting my foot down and say, "You guys got to get the hell out of here." But but it's been going really, really well. I can't complain at all, and it's nice to come home and have dinner made for me. I haven't had that since basically I moved out of my parents' house. I'm like, yay! I feel like a little
Nice.
kid. Can you do my laundry too? And guess what? They do. So there you go. It's like being in college, except I'm married with kids. So I guess it's just like being in college these days. Let's go on to
Actual topics, yes. That's like the
actual topic.
longest preamble we've ever done. But we covered some news in there too, so.
We did cover a little bit of news in there. Now, we have lots of questions from lots of different people, and they cover tons of stuff. First of all, we have lots of comments from some of our listeners and updates, so we'll get to all of those. When we get to the questions, we'll be covering such things as projectors and which to buy. Some speaker recommendations and some speaker issues as far as dealing with Odyssey and that sort of thing. We even got some DJ equipment questions, some more speaker questions, a real dearth of subwoofer questions this week, which is kind of odd for us. Let's see.
Well, we got a couple.
Yeah, I know, but they don't, not like we usually do. DLP modes, or not DLP, DSP modes for and which ones we use and which ones we recommend and why things work the way they do. And somebody wants our honest, no holds bar opinion. I'll give you a little preview of that one. I wish he had crappier gear because it would be so fun to tear into it, but it's not that bad, so whatever. And then somebody's got a TV. There's someone who wants to buy a TV and wants to know which one we think they should buy. So that's the stuff we're going to talk about today. I may or may not fall asleep during this podcast.
Yep.
I got up real early and I have been running all over this town all day. Yesterday I put like 200 miles on my car, just getting all the stuff done I need to get. That's why I literally didn't get back until just before 9.
That's where he was yesterday, folks. If you're wondering, he was driving.
I actually Google Hangout. Hangout talk thing with Rob while I was driving. Talk about dangerous. It was not. It was.
That was not hands-free communication.
I mean, once I pressed the button, I didn't have to do anything. But you're right. All right, so let's get started here. Let's get right into it. Once again, listener of the week was Jason. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
If you want to contact us and ask us a question, there's a number of ways you can do that. You can email us at rob@avrant.com, tom@avrant.com. Come to the website and comment, which of course is avrant.com. Should have picked up on that by now. Facebook.com/avrantpodcast, where you can ask questions and post pictures, and we will comment and like and stuff. Other people.
Well, you'll like. I'm horrible at liking things. I should be better at it, but it always slips my mind.
So sometimes you post stuff. You post stuff as AV Rant Podcast, and I like it. I always like it, and it shows up as being AV Rant Podcast likes its own post, but really one of us posted it, and the other one likes it. So that's how that worked out. And then there's Twitter. Rob is at First Reflect, and I am at AVRant_Tom. So that's that. The underscore messes people up. I'm sorry about that. I didn't know that underscore was going to be an issue. I didn't have a smartphone when I signed up for Twitter. So there we go. All right, first of all, we got Paul. Paul's our race car driver. Paul's a race car driver. I used to be a bass player. I mean, not used to be. I still play bass. I just don't. I mean, I could, but I don't. But anyways, I saw Primus in a concert once with the Pixies and Jane's Addiction. It was a very good concert. I was within literal spitting distance of Les Claypool, who's the bassist, the lead bassist from Primus. Anyways, so Paul's our race car driver, and he's been sending us and posting up pictures of his car, which has the AV Rant sticker on it, his trailer, which has the AV Rant sticker on it, and which he's our personal podcast car thing. It's really great. I love it. I show everybody like all the time. I'm like, I have a race car. You guys don't. And he's also been posting pictures of his daughter's car, which she races on dirt. He races on I guess street, whatever, normal stuff. But she races on dirt, and she's been doing really good. She's been getting firsts and thirds and stuff, and this car is kind of brand new, and they're still fine tuning it. So I'm really excited for her. Do you know her name? Is it Tiffany? I want to say it's Tiffany.
I think that's right. Gosh,
I'm
I
going
should
with
know.
Tiffany.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yep.
Let's go with Tiffany. I wonder how many chairs she has in her house. But that's a joke for the Google Hangout crowd. After we do these podcasts on usually Tuesday, today is Wednesday, Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern time, we have a Google Hangout where we talk, and Paul sometimes shows us his chairs, which is kind of nice. Again, you had to be there. Let's go to the quick questions and updates. Andy over on Facebook. Last week, Jonathan asked us to discuss the Bamberg Series 3 loudspeaker preview, which we were making fun of them for saying that they had fixed floor bounce with a crossover, which we said was impossible. And he wanted to clarify and correct us a little bit. And am I supposed to read this whole paragraph? Because that's going to be boring.
I don't. Well, yeah, okay. I threw it in there because it was Andy's own words, and I didn't want to miss anything that he was saying. But to kind of summarize, he was mentioning that there is a sort of engineering practice where the floor bounce happens because you have sound waves coming out of the speaker up around ear level, which is normally, I don't know, about 3 feet off the ground or so. If you're seated down, you probably have your ears about 3 feet off the ground. And so you have these sound waves emanating from the speaker at around that same height. So they have about 3 feet until they hit the floor, if they were going straight down, and then another 3 feet where they bounce back up to your ears and they bounce off the floor. And so he was saying there is an engineering practice where you can have a speaker that has a bass driver that is really, really close to the floor. You know, it's right down at the bottom of the speaker. And if you set the crossover high enough so that that bass driver is the one that's playing at least the 200 to 300 hertz range, where normally that floor bounce is a problem, if that's the driver that's playing it, then you've basically just moved it so that it's already starting very close to the floor, so you don't really have that same floor bounce that normally comes from your mid-range driver being about 3 feet off the ground. You're moving it, you're not eliminating it.
Yeah, it still doesn't eliminate it. And
Yeah.
it wasn't really done with the crossover either. I mean, not
Right.
really. It was done by putting the woofer
Yeah.
really close. I mean, the crossover is part of it, but it's done by putting the woofer close to the ground. It's fine. I mean, it's fine. You can't eliminate it. I'm sorry. The way to eliminate it is to put a big absorber on the ground. Okay,
right,
and then it won't bounce. That's how you eliminate it. But you can't eliminate it by putting a woofer close to the ground, because you still have the floor bounce. It just happens a lot faster and theoretically goes over your head, and therefore you don't hear it as much.
And Andy did a good job of pointing out that well, yeah, you do that, but then you can't eliminate the ceiling bounce that way, and that'll still exist. And
right.
So the point is, some frequency somewhere is going to happen to be the right distance and height that it bounces off the floor or the ceiling and winds up at your ears and causes some little bit of cancellation or a little bit of reinforcement that gives you a little bit of a boost or a little bit of a dip at that frequency. You can move it around. You can change the design of your speaker and alter the filters that you have in a crossover, and you can move it around, but you can never totally get rid of it because it's a physical thing that's happening in your room.
You can also move it around just by moving the speaker physically around in your room, because
Yeah.
that's going to change what frequencies are going to be the ones that are going to reach your ear from that bounce.
Yeah, but it was a good clarification on what Bamberg might have been doing and what they might have meant when they said, okay, we've meticulously engineered our crossover, right?
No, what they meant was, we're going to say something that sounds impressive so people will buy our speakers. So they got exactly what they meant, all right? I'm not saying it's not a good speaker. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the engineers had anything to do with this. I really don't think so. I would hate to think that that's the case. It's mostly just marketing stuff. Like, we need to be able to tell people that we did something different than anybody else. What do you got? Oh, I don't know. We worked on the crossover a lot. What does that do? Oh, well, it does this. Okay, well, let's just can we spin it this way? Sure.
Anyway, Andy did. He included a link over on Facebook. We'll post that on the actual, proper feed and in the show notes for this episode over on avrant.com in the comments. So he found a website that's got a floor bounce calculator, so you can enter in things like how far away you're seated and how high off the ground your ears are and the driver is, and it will calculate for you what frequency you will have your floor bounce.
It's all in frickin' millimeters, dude. It pisses me off that it's in millimeters. I'm like,
well, if you're doing this, you're on a computer. You can type in convert inches to millimeters, and Google will do it for you.
I mean, I lived in Australia for 2.5 years. I never could quite figure out the millimeter, centimeter, inch thing. I mean, I know it's kind of like what 3 centimeters is an inch or something. You know,
2.54, yeah.
yeah. I just,
If you remember that 30 centimeters is a foot. Yeah,
I,
30
I'm not,
centimeters is a foot.
I've already forgotten it because I'm never going to use it because I'm just going to be angry every time I see millimeters, and that's going to be my life. And all you metric people are just going to deal with that. All right, Mark H is a new listener. Yay, new listeners! Always tell us if you're a new listener so we can go, yay, you're a new listener. We like new listeners. Tell your friends. And he's heard us mentioning room sizes quite a bit. He'd like us to be a little bit more specific as far as what we mean by small, medium, and large room sizes. Well, honestly, Mark, I don't pay much attention to that as far as like cubic thing. I do. I mean, I know what I know kind of like roughly where things are supposed to be. But generally speaking, when I think of these things, I think of small bedroom, like a normal size bedroom. That's small. Okay, medium, master bedroom. Large living room. That's kind of the way I go. Now, if you have like one of those open plan, whatever, that would be something like extreme. That's like not large. It's large. Anything that you can put more than 2 rows of seats in is bigger than large. It's huge, massive or something. That's kind of my rule of thumb for these sorts of things. But there are actual guidelines, and Audioholics has one, and THX has one. Which one do you want to do? You want to do THX or do you want to do Audioholics?
Yeah, I'll mention the THX one so you can explain the Audioholics one. Yeah.
Go on.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, THX comes at it a couple different ways. They do mention specifically cubic feet, and we're always talking approximate here when we're talking cubic feet. It's like roughly how long is your room, roughly how wide is your room, roughly how tall is your room in feet. Multiply all those together, and that'll give you your cubic feet. You were not looking for precise because that doesn't really matter. But they, under THX guidelines, a small room to them is under 1,500 cubic feet. So smaller than that. A medium-sized room for THX is 2,000 cubic feet, and a large room for THX is 3,000 cubic feet or larger. And they're sort of making that coincide with their Select and Ultra, or Select 2 and Ultra 2 certifications that they give out. So you might be thinking, okay, 3,000 cubic feet isn't that big of a room. The whole reason that THX has those sizes is because they're saying, hey, if you buy a receiver that is THX Select 2 certified or a THX Ultra 2 certified, we are basically guaranteeing that it will be able to drive THX certified speakers to full reference volume.
And good luck finding some of those.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's not very many anymore. But they're basically saying we guarantee that we can drive THX certified speakers with a THX certified receiver to full reference volume, which is loud. It is 85 decibels on average at your seat and 105 decibels in the speakers for peaks, 115 decibels for the LFE channel. That's your subwoofer, your dedicated subwoofer channel. And that last one, 115 decibels in the subwoofer, is why they have to limit a medium room to 2,000 cubic feet and a large room to 3,000 cubic feet, because it is very difficult to produce 115 decibels from a subwoofer in a much, much larger room. So that's THX's. They also mention things like seating distances. They're saying, a medium-sized room goes along with a seating distance of up to 10 feet, and a large-sized room would be, they're expecting 12 feet or maybe farther. So that's THX. Audioholics is a little bit different.
Yes. Now, Audioholics has, we did this, they did this, I really was not consulted, but they did this based on our subwoofer stuff. We started rating subwoofers, baseaholic rating, room size ratings. So they wanted to define this. So they have a longer thing here, which I should probably have read, but I didn't. I did a long time ago, but I don't know what the dB level. What's the dB level you have to drive it at? Is it someplace in the?
Oh yeah, I mean yeah. They're going by the what is it, the CEA 2010?
CEA. Yeah, it's 20. Anyway, so for small for them it's under 1,500 square feet. Cubic feet. I corrected myself. Shut up.
You did.
Medium room, it would be 1,500 to 3,000 cubic feet, and the large room is 3,000 to 5,000 cubic feet, and extreme room is greater than 5,000 cubic feet, which I
Yeah.
think is actually it's a little unfair for those medium rooms because that
Yeah.
3,000 cubic foot room is pretty freaking huge, but you know, it certainly gives us you a much better idea of how much power a subwoofer can do. And if it's rated for medium, I think for and you get kind of messed up here because
Hmm.
people get kind of hung up like, well, I have a large room, but you do not have a 5,000 square cubic foot room. You don't. You think
But
you
you
do,
might
but
if
you
you
don't.
have one of those open concept great rooms.
Yeah,
Then
you
you might.
might. In which
Yeah.
case, in which case, if you can get the reference level in some place like that, you are you're seriously flexing the windows. I mean, you're going to be knocking. You're going to have to re-straighten your pictures after every movie. You have to worry. And I hate to say this. In my old house in Jacksonville, I used to have to worry about how I put my glassware away because
Hmm.
the subwoofer would hit and I would hear all my stemware clinking against each other if they were too close.
Hmm.
And that's the sort of things you'll have to deal with if you've got a large room and you can pressurize it to this level. So pretty ma- pretty major difference there between the two. But
Yeah.
THX, that medium room is kind of useless. It's only 500. There's only a 500 cubic feet difference between that and the
Yeah.
small.
Well, it's
So
because I mean they don't really have a small certification thing. I
no,
mean their version is basically like a desktop system on a computer. That's what they would be their small classification if they had one. So they pretty much start at THX Select, which is basically saying, all right, this is good for any room up to 2,000 cubic feet. THX Ultra 2 is good for any room up to 3,000 cubic feet, or maybe a little bit more. But they're basically saying you keep it to that, and it'll play at the levels we promise.
they really only have two room sizes, is what you're
Yeah.
saying, and
Yeah.
I agree. We have four. I've never seen anything. I've seen things get large room. I don't think I've ever seen anything get an extreme room.
Oh, I think there were a couple.
Were
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it can be done. That is
And
some major output.
and that might be impressive to some people, and they may go, "Oh my God, I need a sub like that." Well, if you're putting it in a small room,
Hmm.
you're wasting it. You're
Like me.
buying all that sub. I know. You're buying all that sub, and you're barely gonna be inching the volume knob up. Now, does it have
Hmm.
lots of headroom? Yes, but it's not the kind of headroom you're gonna be able to ever use.
Yeah. No,
This is
it could
just
be like
pure output.
I have a tiny room. It is well under 1,500 cubic feet, and I got two PC-13 Ultras in there, and I can literally flex the walls if I, turn it up a bit. I can put my eye close to the side of the wall and watch it bow out if I want.
Now
I'm
that
not exaggerating. That is
don't you
real.
have neighbors? You have like
I
neighbors,
do.
right?
Oh,
You're
I'm
like
in
in
an
a
apartment, man. I've got neighbors all around me.
So how do you ever watch movies and not piss everybody off?
I watch them during the day. Lots of people make noise in my apartment building. They're fine with it. And I like that's not how I listen to the movie. I don't listen to it to the point where I'm physically bowing out the door, bowing out the wall. I tried it out and found out it was possible. I was like, oh, that's what that extraneous noise was. It was my
It
wall
was
physically moving.
it was screws and nails popping. That's what that was. That was drywall crumbling. All right, last week Charles wrote us on Facebook asking for the possible reasons why his music system cuts out suddenly when he's playing loud music at a party. Rob and I were both very convinced that it was a stray wire that might have done it. But Ray, one of our listeners, our loyal listeners, and he often comes to the Hangouts, and he is a custom installer or custom calibrator. Sorry,
Calibrated.
he calibrates displays. I guess he does speakers
And
too.
audio.
Yeah, but he definitely does displays. And he wanted to recommend that because Charles mentioned that the wires were pre-run. It is possible that they ran it with such a small gauge wire, and that the wire itself might be acting as a resistor as it heats up, and that could shut down uh, your
Receiver or
your
amplifier.
receiver, yeah,
Yeah.
your amplifier,
Send it
whatever
into
it is.
protection mode.
So that's theoretically possible.
Yep.
So you might want to check that, and if that's the case, that sucks, dude. That's
Well, I
basically
mean,
what.
I think we've all seen it, right? Where they've run like 20 or 22 gauge
Oh,
wire for the speakers
you see,
because
this
they're,
is one of those things that I never think of. I never think of because
yeah,
I've always run my own wire, and I would never run anything less than like 16 gauge.
yeah,
And when I
at
say
the
less, I
very
mean a
least.
higher number, you know. But I mean,
Yeah.
16 gauge short run surround speaker that's never getting anything, you know, very far under 80 hertz. I'm kind of okay with that. You
Hmm.
know, normally though I run 12 or 10 gauge.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, it just depends what I have access to. But you're right. I could totally see them using something ridiculously small, uh,
Yep.
and then you're just going to be hosed.
Yeah, because I
So
mean, sometimes it'll be like 22 gauge aluminum wire, right? Because they're thinking, oh, the only speaker somebody's going to connect here is like, a clock radio, basically. So, if that was the plan and that's what was already run inside your walls, then yep, though you start pumping through some serious wattage there, and yeah, they can heat up and act as a resistor. So that is possible. I still think, though, that it probably is one little stray strand of wire somewhere, some connection in your system, and it very well might be the one that's inside your wall plate. That could easily be the case. I still think that's the one because it's so
okay,
often.
these are my theories. My theory is my first and I think most possible one is that there is a stray wire. The second one is that he put a nail through something someplace. Okay.
Well, then it's unlikely that it would play for a while and then stop.
Yeah, that's why I don't. That's why I think that one is pretty. And I think this
Yeah.
last one is possible, but pretty. You know, if it's just sort of nicking it, you know, that there's a nail that's just sort of nicking it or something like that. Theoretically, you know, it could have damaged it inside the wall, and then they pulled the nail out or something like that. Now there's some strands that are kind of doing whatever. Who knows? But yeah, this last one that is the really thin wire. I would check the wire for sure. He's going to do that anyways. But rewire it like 3 times at least before you come back and tell us that that's not what it is. Because we're just going to keep telling you to keep doing it. Neil M. Wrote to Tom saying that many years ago, many moons ago, Tom helped him with the subwoofer setup, and Neil got the bass in his room sounding as good as his existing setup would allow. He's remained an avid listener, yay! And now we've convinced him to buy, and SVS should be giving us some money. SVS SB2000. And Neil, tell them that you're a listener. Sound unheard. He's convinced it's going to be good. It's going to be good, dude. You're
Yep.
going to have to worry about that. Very rarely will I go. Very rarely will I go out on a limb and say, yeah, you can buy that one without worrying about it. You can buy that one without worrying about it. I don't know the size of his room, though, so he might run into a
True.
headroom issue. But other than that, you should be fine. He's going to try it both by itself and paired with his existing sub. The dual subs would really impress him. He'll try to get a second SB2000 either way. He says he'll keep us posted. Yay! David V took our advice from last week and hopped on an Aperion audio sale. He went above and beyond, though. He really took our advice and bought both the Varus Grand shelf speakers and the Varus Forte. He's going to test them both out and send back the one he doesn't like. And he
Yep.
also bought an SVS SB2000 subwoofer. If we were getting a cut from this, we wouldn't have to have listeners of the week. It's ridiculous. I should be getting 20% at this point, right?
20%. I don't know about that, but
I'll take
yeah,
5%.
some little finder's fee. Yep.
5% would be like what, $40? $40 would be nice for every
That'd be
sale that we
sweet.
made. That would be too bad.
There's been a few.
On a side note, this is once again David
Yep.
V. He says his father built a room within a room in his condo in Europe on accident. He accidentally did it. Basically, his father was just bothered by his neighbors making noise, so he began trying to soundproof his condo and basically wound up with a room within a room by the end. That's pretty freaking awesome, dude.
Now, I do wonder if he took down the drywall that was already on his side of the wall and then put up another set of studs and then another layer of drywall. Because if he didn't, if he just basically put up, like left the wall as it was and then put up another set of studs and another layer of drywall, then you get what's called the triple leaf effect. They talk about this all the time over at Soundproofing Company, where you want to not have vibrating membranes in between other vibrating membranes. It's not the most efficient way of doing it, but the whole point is obviously David's father just kind of kept going until he couldn't hear his neighbors anymore. So Yay!
Hey, it could be the cask of Amontillado in there. He just like bricked it, kept putting bricks up until he can't hear anything on the other side. It doesn't make any difference. Obviously it worked, and if it
Yep.
worked, then it worked. All right. So those are the comments and stuff like that. So now we get to the actual questions for this week. Jay, so our first one's got a couple of questions. We'd like to know what front projector Tom and Rob would purchase for themselves, assuming a budget of maybe $4,000, maximum of $4,000, and a medium to large size room with light control, but not with pitch blackness. And a screen size in the 120-inch ballpark, and what exact model of projector would we get for ourselves and why? Wow. It's to me a $4,000 projector.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even a $3,000 projector, you're getting into the realm where it's six of one, half dozen of another for me. You can really kind of agonize over it, but
Mm-hmm.
if somebody said there's like a bunch of unmarked boxes, every one of these projectors is in between $3,500 and $4,000.
Right.
I'm pretty sure you could just go up there and grab one, and you would set it up and go, "This is a great projector. This is really good. Oh my God!" Now, can you get marginally better performance if you do a lot of research? Yes, you can, and I'm sure Rob's going to have an exact thing. But I think at this point, you know, there's going to be some stuff that's going to make one better than the other, but it's not
specific areas, right?
Yeah. It's not going to be these light year differences that we see into lower price points. It's not like you're going to be able to get like $1,000 price point. You might get like a business class projector, which just sounds like a freight train in the back of your room. Like some sort of wind tunnel going on back there with its fan noise, versus something else which is a home theater projector. So it's nice and quiet, but it's not nearly as bright. And it's got other issues that go along with that. But at this price point, you're not going to run into that. I would probably start my search with JVC and Optima. Probably would be the two brands I would immediately look at. But I would certainly not rule anybody out in this price point because you certainly can find a great projector from a number of different companies. But what specific model would you suggest, Rob?
Well, he asked which one I would get given these parameters. So I will answer that question first, which is, if I had these parameters, I would get the Sony VPL HW55ES. That is a very specific model. That is a liquid crystal on silicon. They call it SXRD for some reason over at Sony because they wanted a trademark name. But the technology is liquid crystal on silicon. It is a 1080p projector. And he wanted to know why that specific model if I had these parameters. And it's because I'm looking for a balance of, first of all, I want really good black levels. And if it were only black levels I was looking at, I would get the JVC. The DLA X35 is the one that falls into this price range. And if it were only black levels, that one's still the champ. But the Sony comes darn close. So this is not, he's saying he doesn't have a totally pitch black room in this scenario. I doubt you'll ever see the difference. So that black levels is one. Contrast goes hand in hand with that. The Sony is capable of being brighter. The JVC is no slouch when you have it fully calibrated. It can light up a 120-inch screen. But this is me, and I like 3D. And 3D needs a ton of brightness. And Jay said he said in his email he's not against 3D. That on occasion he might want to watch 3D.
I'm not against 3D. I would at least try it once. I wouldn't boycott it, is what I'm saying. I'm not like, if it was in my house and there were some 3D glasses around, I would give it a go.
Yeah.
I'm not like, I'm not partisan on the whole issue. I just generally think that even if I had the glasses and the movies, I would do it once and go, and then not probably do it again. I think the kids would do it though. My kids would do it for sure.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, the red and blue ones that come with the whatever the stupid movie was with the Spy Kids movies. Just one of the Spy Kids were like that.
Yeah, they packed like 8 of those anaglyph glasses in the DVD case or something like that.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, 3D is difficult when it comes to front projection because you need so much light, and if you're doing it with only one projector, you have to do it with the shutter glasses. The Sony that I mentioned comes with 2 pairs of shutter glasses, and then you can obviously buy more. It also has the option of running. No, they're not that bad. They're like $75 each or something
How
like
is
that.
that not that bad? But go on.
Well, it's it's not the end of the world. And you have the option of running either infrared or radio frequency to control those glasses. So they have both options there. I mean, if you want a really, really good looking 3D experience, you end up having to get like two projectors and different filters, and you have to use a silver screen if you want to do the polarized version. And there's another one. Actually, I should probably link this up because there's a system called the Omega 3D system, which is pretty cool. It does not polarize it. It uses two projectors and two different filters, but it does this weird thing where basically there's the three primary colors, red, green, and blue that are coming out of each projector, and what it does is it very narrowly filters just a very, very tight little wedge of red, green, and blue for both projectors so that it's slightly offset from one another. And so the glasses they use, you can use it on a regular white screen, but the glasses make it so that your left eye only sees those very specific narrow band ranges of red, green, and blue for the left eye, and then offset red, green, and blue for the right eye. And it works. The problem is it cuts the light by like 80%. So you need two projectors. There's no way around it. So yeah, anyway, bottom line, 3D from projectors is always a challenge, but if I'm going to do it for this price, this kind of screen, the Sony can put out a ton of light. It won't be super duper color accurate when it does, but it can do it. And the JVC can't. So that's one reason I would go there.
So I'm going to recommend the JVC because screw 3D, and you get better black levels. And
I mean the JVC can still do 3D. It's just it'll be really, really dim. So yeah, there it is. The Sony is.
I think it's really dim to do 3D anyways.
The Sony's really, really accurate out of the box too, and that one for some reason Sony's really weird. Like on their highest level full 4K resolution projector, they didn't include a color management system. And calibrators are like, why? We're paying $14,000 or $30,000 for your high-level projectors, and you don't give us color management. But the HW55ES does have color management in their $3,500 projector. So, yay, that's there. But yeah, that's the one I'd go for.
He also had a correction for Rob that Rob had included Mission Impossible 4 in his list of Blu-ray movies that switch between 2.35 to 1 and 16:9 aspect ratios. It doesn't. It just stays in 2.35 to 1. Yeah, that was exciting.
Mission Impossible 4. It wasn't oversight. I was remembering having seen it in the IMAX theater where it most definitely switched. But yeah, wanted to make one other point. If you're a gamer and you're trying to use that with a projector, you do have to worry a little bit about input lag because some projectors, they have quite a bit of lag. The JVCs have quite a bit of lag. The Sonys have an actual game mode, which is pretty good. It's under 20 milliseconds of lag, which some super duper competitive gamers would say that's still not good enough. But as far as projectors go, that's about as good as it gets. So there too, since I do like to game and might do that. Well, I like to game. I don't, since I don't have time. I would like to. That's one other reason.
That's right. I also like to drive sports cars, but that doesn't happen either.
I should just mention one other thing is just because
you
some of the people
stop giving me the hint that you keep implying that you're done, and then when I try to go on,
well, I think
there's one more thing.
There is one more thing. It's like an Apple conference. Some folks might be wanting to do the whole anamorphic lens or what they call the poor man's anamorphic lens, which is just using the zoom if you want to do the 2.35 to 1 screen thing. Some projectors have motorized zoom and focus and lens shift, and that is really, really helpful if you want to do that whole thing where you actually are changing sizes. And so the JVCs have that, and they have a lens memory, so you can set up. You can say, okay, here's the zoom and the focus and the lens shift I want to use when I'm watching 2.35 to 1 movies, and here's the focus and zoom and lens shift I want to use when I'm watching 60:9, and you can set those in memory and just press a button on the remote, and it'll automatically switch between the two. The Sony I mentioned can't do that. All of those adjustments are manual on that Sony, so it's only good for set it and forget it one screen size.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That JVC is pretty cool. You're really selling that.
It is. Yeah. If you chose that one, I would have no beef.
Well, you see, that's another thing I'm saying. I mean, at this price point, it's going to be really hard to say, oh, well, you totally threw your money away. And there's just so much good stuff out there. All right, Rohan. This is a great name. Rohan had previously written us about the Focal Chorus speakers, which he was worried about because he bought them and then started reading reviews afterwards. But he bought them after listening to them and liked them. And we put his mind at ease. But now he like to optimize his setup. He has Focal front speakers with some Dolly surround speakers. Hey, Dolly, I like Dolly. And a Dolly subwoofer. I've never heard a Dolly subwoofer, but whenever I like somebody's speakers, and then I generally think their subwoofers probably suck. But I've never heard one, so maybe this one's great. He's also got a Denon X2000 receiver, which is a good receiver, and a 14-foot by 12-foot by 11.5-foot theater. I'd call that. Is that quite? It doesn't quite get to large for me. It looks like it's someplace in the medium range. That was my eyeballing it.
But that is only his theater area. It is.
I know. I'm just talking about theater area at this point. I think it's
yes,
so many.
yeah.
So the problem that he's got right here now that one side is open to the rest of the house. Okay, that's the area. So since it's open to the rest of the house, it's definitely in the large category. All the surfaces are very hard: concrete, brick, and marble. She says it's typical in India. I've been to India. I don't remember that much marble, but maybe I'm not. I didn't go to the cool places. I was staying in youth hostels. That probably had something to do with it.
Yeah,
the only absorptive materials in the room are some heavy curtains over the window on the side wall. I assume as well as the seats. Okay, I assume you're not sitting on granite seats, or marble seats, which is brick. But
it might be modern. Clean
That's true.
line.
It could be like that folded plywood, that bent plywood stuff or something.
Yeah.
He took our advice to the subwoofer crawl using test tones from the audiocheck.net, which should also be paying us something for something. He found the best practical location for his subwoofer, and he's happy with the way the bass sounds in this room. Yay! I bet he can't flex his marble walls.
No, I would doubt that.
He has 3 questions. Number 1. He'd like to know how to best set up the toe-in of his speakers. He started with his front speakers towed in as shown in the Focal manual, which basically had them aimed directly at his head. He says that gave him an extremely small sweet spot and very little sense of soundstage width. He tried the speakers with only a very small toe-in. That gave him the soundstage width he wanted, but it made the location of sounds less precise, and even made it sometimes seem as though sounds were randomly moving. So how can you best find the toe-in of the toe-in angles? Well, you're doing it right. Basically, I do it this way. I usually start with them pointed right at my head, then I point them straight out, and then I start adjusting in between. Your problem, of course, sir, is your room. The minute that they're not pointed at your head, and even then, really, but they're going to probably sound best while they're pointed at your head, and that's because you're getting the most direct sound, and it's going to be louder than the reflected sound. The minute you start listening to off-axis, more sound is going to be bouncing around the room and getting to your ear, and it's causing that whole sounds randomly moving thing. It's not random. It's your room. Everything's reflecting off of everything. This is the point where we're supposed to offer some sort of solution to this problem?
Well, I mean, I'll give a slightly more technical, maybe even math-based way.
Ooh, math.
I'm
a beer.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you do your math.
Just in general of the whole idea of toe-in, what you first want to do is figure out listening. I usually use pink noise. Even just if you go into your speaker's setup menu inside of your AV receiver, there's usually something that will let you set the individual channel levels for each speaker, and when you go to change the channel level, it will play pink noise through that speaker. What you can do is get pretty close to the speaker, get maybe a meter away at most, maybe even within a foot or two of the speaker, and get yourself bang dead on straight ahead of that and listen to the pink noise. And then slowly move yourself to the left and right of that dead center. And at some point, as you move your way to the side of the speaker, you'll notice that just the overall sound of the pink noise changes right to your own human ears. We're not using any fancy measurement equipment with this. You'll notice as you sort of move around to the side that eventually the pink noise will just change in its overall sound. And what you want to try to do is see how far you can get to the side of the speaker while the pink noise still sounds pretty much the same as when you're dead straight on. And that's a way that you can roughly find the dispersion of your speakers. When we're talking about dispersion, we're talking about how wide, how far to the left and right of dead ahead center does the speaker play while maintaining overall the same sound. And some of them are much more narrow than others. Focal tends to have very wide dispersion. You might find you get 30 to 45 degrees off to one side or the other before that pink noise really noticeably changes from bang
That's
on.
very wide. That's quite wide.
It is wide, yeah.
We do measurements for audioholics. We do straight on, do 15 degrees off axis and 30 degrees off axis. Yeah. And having something that's really wide like that makes it a lot easier for you to set up your speakers because you're not so worried about toe in. A lot of times you just listen to them, you just point them straight out and don't worry about it. They're going to sound the same as pointing them straight at your head anyhow.
Yeah. But, you know, let's say you have a speaker that 25 degrees to the left and right of dead ahead center, that pink noise sounds pretty much the same. We're not talking about a minuscule difference. You'll probably notice a minuscule difference the moment you move slightly off center. But it'll pretty much sound the same. So let's just, you know, theoretically say, okay, you got 25 degrees to left or right. What you would want to do in a, you know, mathematical objective scenario is have, you know, you're mostly caring about, say, a 3-seater couch, right? Like a 6 foot wide or so listening area. That's probably your primary listening area. And ideally what you would have is all 3 seats fall within that, in this case, like a 50-degree window, right? So the leftmost seat of your left front speaker, you could have it aimed so that 25 degrees to the left of dead center, you know, you're hitting that leftmost seat, and then within that whole 50-degree window, your rightmost seat would also be covered. And that means that all 3 seats across that couch are getting pretty uniform sound from that speaker. So if you want to do it geometry-wise, that's one way. And the tip I give is if you have you know, a smartphone with a compass app, again, you know, you're doing this approximately. If you have a compass app, you can line that up on the top of your speaker and, you know, pretty much figure out the angles.
Laser pointer also helps. You put a laser, set a laser pointer right on top of your speaker, and you can play with it that way.
But you know, that helps you so that, you know, the rightmost seat, when it's facing the front left speaker, so that's the 2 positions that are diagonally across from each other, you don't want that seat to have totally different sound coming at it from that left front speaker than the middle seat or the left seat. You'd like them to be kind of uniform. So that's one way to do it. But when you're in a room like this that's really highly reflective, that might not help you so much, because what you're really worried about is not having a huge ratio of reflected sound to direct sound. So like Tom says, you might just have to kind of point it right at your head to get as much direct sound versus reflected sound as you can.
Yeah, and you know what, let's talk more about the RUM after we finish the question. It's going to keep coming up, so let's just go ahead and go on to the next one. He also ran Odyssey Multi-Q XT. It told him that his front left and right speakers were wired with reverse polarity, which means they're out of phase. Like you mixed up, like in one, you know, your red and black wires are connected to the opposite instead of, you know, being red and black. He double and triple checked his speaker wires, and they are wired correctly, red to red, black to black. So should he be worried about Odyssey's warning message? Of course you should be. It's going to explode. Or should he...
That's sarcasm in case someone is...
Somebody stop the podcast and go over there unplugging things.
It will not explode.
It will not explode. That's crazy talk. Or he should just proceed, since he is very certain that his wires are not crossed. Well, you did not address or mention that the possibility that your internal wiring on your speakers is different. You know, just because the speaker terminals are correctly attached to the right ones, it is theoretically possible that the internal wiring of your speaker is wrong. I believe it or not, that has shown up in reviews before.
That's true.
We have gotten stuff where we're like, what? This is not right. And one of the speakers has been the internal wiring. That usually happens when we get like first runs or prototypes.
Yeah, it's like pre-production.
Pre-production sort of stuff. It doesn't normally happen. I doubt that is the case. I would highly doubt the case. What's probably the case is that all your reflections across your room are messing Odyssey up. It's confusing Odyssey. So as stuff is bouncing back, it's sounding out of phase to Odyssey. Just like it's sounding out of phase to you when you're sitting in your seat and suddenly a sound seems to move around the room slightly. That is that reflected sound coming back and distorting your sound stage. Okay, and if you ever heard a speaker that when you have one speaker wired out of phase and the other one's not, if you've ever heard that before in a room, and I've heard it, it's hilarious. Like I've gone into people's house, I'm like, what's wrong with your speakers? What do you mean? It sounds fine to me. I'm like, everything's coming out of one. It sounds like it's sort of kind of coming partially out of your own head and partially out of one side of the room. That's the way
Yep.
it sounds to me. And then you go and you wire it, and you fix the wiring, and people are like, oh my God, is it supposed to sound like that? Like, yeah. Where? What? How did you live like this? How long has this been this way? I don't know, like forever, I guess. I haven't touched those things in 3 years. I'm like, I'm never coming to this house again. But so yes, you should be worried about it, but there's nothing you can do about it because Odyssey is experiencing the exact same thing you are, which means Odyssey is working, and so are you, Rob.
Yeah, I mean,
After that,
there's a very good chance here that. Sorry, can you hear me or?
yeah, I can, yeah.
Okay, yeah. There's a good chance here, based on what Rohan was saying, that his speakers are properly wired and they are in phase because when he was doing his toe-in tests and he had them aimed straight at his head, he got the effect of, oh, it sounds like it's coming just from my center speaker. That would not happen if your speakers were wired completely out of phase.
Not
It really would not. So on that front, I totally believe you that you double and triple checked, and I think you're fine as far as the actual physical wiring goes, just going by the context clues. But one thing I wanted to mention is you want to get that toe-in of your speakers set before you run Odyssey, because Odyssey is changing a bunch of stuff. It's trying to EQ. It is also using fur filters to try and do stuff in the time domain too. It's trying to lessen the reflections that it thinks should not be there in an ideal room. It's trying to shorten those down. So changing the toe-in of your speakers has a pretty big effect on that kind of stuff. So I would definitely say turn all the Odyssey stuff off just for the moment, play the pink noise, and get your toe-in set where you like it first, and then run Odyssey again. Don't just leave it the way it is now. So I think that's an important thing for Rohan to do. But
Yeah.
I think you're okay, and I think if you do that, if you turn Odyssey off, get your toe-in set the way that sounds proper to you, and then you run it again, you might not get that warning message. That would be the hope. The reason that it's coming up is because we should, just for the sake of accuracy, Odyssey, the actual Odyssey program, isn't responsible in the AV receiver for setting the distances and levels and things like that. That is actually done by the manufacturers. They're the ones who set the parameters for all that stuff. It just all gets lumped into the auto setup that's called Odyssey. Odyssey, the software, is only taking care of the EQing and the fur filters and trying to balance that stuff out. So all the technical setup stuff is done by the manufacturers themselves. But yeah, if the reason that's happening is because it's saying, all right, I know when I sent out the signal from the speaker, and I know when the microphone should receive it based on the distance, how far away it is, and it's arriving so much later that I think your speakers are out of phase, and that can happen if you have a ton of reflections. So
Yeah.
that's the cause of it.
All right, his last question here is that he's using the movie sound mode. Wasn't specific as to which one because there's a bunch, but he's using the movie sound mode for surround sound movies and the direct mode for 2-channel music. The volume levels are wildly different with these two. He's concerned that he has to turn up the volume about 5 to about a -5 dB on the dial, which is quite high, just to get movies sounding loud enough. While -23 dB on in direct music is plenty loud enough for music. Why is this the case? Now, Rohan did something very smart. He sent us. I don't know if did you ask him to do this or did he do
Nope,
this on his own?
he sent it along. He's a smart cookie.
He is a smart cookie. He sent us images of all of his settings, and digging through all those little pictures and stuff, Rob found and pointed out to me that he had. It was the Odyssey. Is it dynamic volume?
Volume, yeah.
Set to high or
Yeah, heavy is the
extreme,
word they give, but that's
heavy. Yeah.
the
Uh,
highest setting that it has.
yeah. So when you turn on your movie mode, Odyssey is engaged.
Yeah.
Okay, and all of the Odyssey settings that are involved are engaged at that point. When you go to direct mode, you get rid of all that, and you're just there's no EQing going on, right? The channel levels are, of course, maintained. And if you're doing any bass management, which I'm not sure, he says two-channel music, direct should not have any bass management either. It should just be. I mean,
Well,
sometimes
I
it
mean,
depends on which one he
it
uses because some
it
of
does
them will
depend.
have. Yeah, some of them will have direct, and you can set it. Like I remember I didn't use the Yamaha that I used the processor. You could set direct separately so that you had
Hmm.
direct, and then you could set your channels to be full range for just direct, or you could have them do the bass management and everything else.
The way Denon describes direct mode in their own manual is that no change is made whatsoever to the incoming signal. So that suggests to me that even base management isn't happening at that point.
It should happen. Yeah. Well, maybe I don't know.
I'm not
Okay,
I'm not
it just
100%
depends.
certain
I'm
that to be
telling
honest
you,
with
whatever receiver you have, you'll have to look this up and make sure see what's happening. And a lot of times with Denons, especially, you can just look at the thing and it'll show you. You show the front little thing that said that you can count the speakers. There's only two speakers lit up. Well, that's how many speakers are playing.
you. Hmm.
That's why I love Denons. I've always loved Denons displays because they did that. Yamahas do it now as well, but they didn't used to. Uh, also love that some of the I don't know if they still do it, but they used to have like the incoming signal and they show you which channels are coming in. They show you the outgoing signal. That way you're like, yep, I know exactly what's going on, and I don't have to figure out whether or not I've got 2x on or whatever. Anyways, so that being said, the reason why the volume is different is because you've got, first of all, dynamic volume set to extremely high or heavy or whatever it is, and
Hmm.
all the Odyssey stuff is happening, and in direct mode, none of that stuff is happening. So that's why.
Yeah, I've mentioned this. It was well, it's a couple of months ago now. So who knows if anyone remembers or heard it, or we have new listeners all the time. Yay, new
Yay!
listeners! So they wouldn't have heard me talk about going through these Odyssey settings. I am no fan of dynamic volume. I think it completely destroys the sound, even at its lowest setting. I turn dynamic volume off. I don't want it at all. The idea of dynamic volume is the whole thing where you're watching TV and you're watching the TV show, and then the ads come on, and the ads are way louder than the TV show, and it's supposed to even that out for you. Or you're watching a movie at night and you don't want the explosions to be any louder than when people are talking. And so that's what dynamic volume is doing, is just crushing everything down so that everything is always equally loud, no matter what is going on. I don't like that to begin with, but even worse is when it changes the actual character and tone of the sound, which to me dynamic volume does. I am a fan of dynamic EQ. Dynamic EQ is a thing that keeps your bass sounds audible, your surround effects audible, even if you turn the volume dial down. Normally, those things just become inaudible because we aren't very good at hearing bass and we aren't very good at hearing sounds coming from behind us. So if you turn the volume down, they disappear. Dynamic EQ makes sure you still hear them. So you can have dynamic EQ under Odyssey on and have dynamic volume off. And
Yeah.
that's the way I would suggest setting up, and that's why your volume differences are so huge.
The only time I ever really liked dynamic volume, and there's Dolby Volume. There's a couple of other ones that are out
Yeah.
there that are like that. They all have the same sort of name. They all do basically the same thing. The times I really like it is when I'm trying to take a nap.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in my home theater and I put on golf because dang, if you can't fall asleep to golf, you can't fall asleep. So I just offended somebody. I'm sorry, and I'm not really sorry. Golf's boring. You know golf's boring. If you're not playing golf or you're not like invested in some way, it's boring. Anyhow, uh, I the commercials will come on or there'll be somebody clapping and it'll wake me up. It drives me nuts. Turn on dynamic volume and you're like, and once you
Right.
turn the volume down, you know it's good. Now, the dynamic EQ where the bass is adjusted based, you can experience this. I experience this all the time in my car, right? When I'm driving around and I've got the music on low because I'm talking to my wife or whatever, I often feel like I need to pump the bass up and take that bass adjustment and pump that bass up. But
Mm-hmm.
like today, because it's Florida and it's summer, it was pissing rain on me. Like, I mean, it was coming down in huge droplets, and it made so much noise. I kept turning. I had to turn the radio up so I could hear whatever I was listening to.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was listening to NPR or something. But there was a male voice. A man was talking. He had a deep voice, and the volume got when the volume got up really high, the bass was so high, and this was just set to flat at this point in the car. I
Right.
couldn't understand the guy, so I
Mm-hmm.
had to turn the bass down so that it was even across the entire range. And that is the perfect example of what dynamic EQ is trying to do. You know,
Yeah.
go in your car, turn your volume up really loud during talk radio, and if it sounds all smudgy and weird and it makes you want to turn the bass down, that's what dynamic EQ is doing.
So can
Okay.
we talk for just a second about this whole practice? Because I see this so much, especially on forums and that, where people take it as some kind of unwritten rule that they're supposed to listen to music in direct mode. Because this is something I see so much where people will come in and say, well, of course I use direct mode. I'm not stupid enough to use some other listening mode. Of course I use direct mode. That's what everybody says I should do. I've seen that on YouTube videos of like places I respect, like there's AV Rev that does really good receiver reviews on YouTube, and they're like, oh, well, thank God it has a direct mode because that's all you'd ever want to use for music. I'm like, okay, so let's think about this for a second. What is the point of going through all the setup, right? We position our speakers as well as we can. Maybe we treat our rooms with acoustic treatments and bass traps and diffusers and stuff like that, right?
Not
And
Rohan.
no, not in this case, but maybe we do. And so we do all that, and then we're still listening, and maybe we're measuring, and we're finding, okay, even with all of that, even with the careful setup and the acoustic treatments, I'm still not getting linear frequency response at my seat. So I use a little bit of EQ, right? I use a little bit of EQ or an automated room correction system or something like that to get the sound right where I want it. Why was the sound not right where I wanted it to begin with? Because of the room. The room, not the equipment, not the speakers. It was because of the room. The room made the sound that actually reaches your ears at your seat inaccurate. That's the thing that made it inaccurate. And we did all this other stuff, including the EQ, to get it back to accurate. And then, for some reason, when we listen to music, we turn it all off. We turn off all the stuff we did to correct for the room because somebody said, well, otherwise you're messing with the signal and it's not pure. The signal's not pure anyway because of your room. We did all this stuff to correct for the room. So why are we turning it all off? Hmm?
It's the same. It's the same people with the vinyl, right? It's like there's some sort of purity to the sound. Like you can't touch music. Music is different. We need to run everything in pure direct or whatever. You know, the idea. Now, if you want to run stuff in pure direct, you have to admit this. You have to say this. I believe that having a cable that is connected that has video in it and having video circuitry inside my receiver will make the sound of my music. It will mess up the sound of the music.
Yeah.
Just by having it there.
Mm-hmm.
No power is going through it. You're not using the TV at this point. You're just listening to some music on your CD. Just by having it in there.
Mm-hmm.
If that sounds like BS to you, everything else is BS to you too, because that's what it all stems from. This whole idea that we have to be able to shut down everything and get rid of, because we want, what we really want are separates. And we don't just want separates. We want separates like hardcore separates, where they take the power transformer and put it in a separate box, and they take the video part and they put that in a separate box, and everything's separated by tinfoil hats because they're all crazy people. And I mean, I understand the theory behind it, and they can certainly point to specific instances and specific receivers where that has been a problem. There's been some sort of crosstalk or something that's been going on that's been weird. It certainly can happen.
Huge electromagnetic noise or something like that. Yeah.
It's just you would know it. You would know it. This would not be something
humming or hissing at you.
And you're like, but when I run it in pure direct, it sounds different. Yeah, it sounds different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe you.
Yeah, you don't have any bass management, you don't have any tone controls, and you got rid of all your room correction. Yeah, it sounds different. I believe it.
I would hope it sounds. I hope you think it sounds worse, but maybe you don't.
But I mean, this is the same. This is the same mentality as the people say. Of course, I have a subwoofer for movies, but when I listen to music, I turn my subwoofers off. Of course, I do. I have to because it's two-channel music. There's no subwoofer. There's no subwoofer signal, a separate, dedicated subwoofer signal in my two-channel music. So of course I turn my subwoofers off. I'm like, all a subwoofer is it took a two-way bookshelf and turned it into a full-range three-way speaker, or it took a three-way tower and turned it into a four-way full-range speaker. That's all a subwoofer did. It just gives you the tremendous benefit of being able to place that third or fourth woofer in the location in your room where it doesn't mess itself up by the time it reaches your ears. It doesn't have to be a totally separate channel to warrant its existence. You got all the sound you're supposed to get. Why would you want to turn your subwoofer off for music? There's content down into, well, the lowest note on a piano is 28 hertz. I bet your speakers don't play down there, or even if they do, they don't sound like it at your seat. They don't play linearly down to 28 hertz at your seat. So it's the same mentality, and so I will try to encourage people to not use direct mode. Why would you turn off all the lovely things? Why would you get rid of your subwoofer? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. All right, let's go back to Rohan at this point. So at this point, we've kind of addressed most of your questions here. The problem, of course, the overriding problem here is your room. Your room is very reflective, and I understand that. At this point, you got to know what we're going to say, and that's that you need to try to do something about it. Now, I'm not saying you have to coat your walls in carpet or do some sort of massive room treatment thing here, but you can do a couple of little small things to help yourself out. At the very least, you should be looking at your first reflection points and just seeing if there's some way you can put something at your first reflection points that will block or absorb some of that reflected sound. I would also consider trying to put something behind your speakers.
Yeah.
Right behind your speakers and in front of your speakers on the back wall. To
behind your seat.
Behind you. That's right. All the way on the back wall, so that you're getting rid of those slap echoes from the front wall and from the back wall and the first reflection points. If you could just do something, even if it's minor, anything at this point is going to help. And I know it's going to be hard, and I don't know what your living situation is or how that sort of stuff works, but think about it. Think about what furniture you could put there, or what piece of absorptive art might go there.
If you're willing to, go to a place like I know GIK Acoustics. They have sales out of Europe, and I don't know if they cover into India as well out of that branch. I mean, at least they're on the same land mass. You wouldn't have to be shipping it overseas or something like that. I'm not sure, but check out GIK Acoustics just to see if you're willing to. You can put their panels on stands. They sell stands as well. So we don't want to say, hey, he's totally not willing to do that. He might be.
Yep.
The other thing is, I didn't see it specifically mentioned. He says he's got a marble floor, a hard marble floor. I don't know if he's got a rug.
Better get a rug, dude. I mean, they have rugs in India. I'm sure of that.
Yes. Yeah, a rug would be a nice thick rug, if you can, would be a big help in between your speakers and your seats, so that you are getting rid of a little bit of that floor bounce that we've talked about.
Regardless of how well your crossover is designed. Okay. So that was a good one, Rohan. Thank you for emailing us, and I hope we helped. Yeah, I do hope. Michael wants to start up a small DJing service for things like weddings and local parties. This is, I gotta say, this question completely threw me for a loop. I was like, DJing? Wow. Yeah. I'll tell you what, Michael, for DJing, the bar is set so damn low for sound quality. I told you guys I was going to a writers conference in Orlando last weekend, and I did go. It was a complete debacle. I went up to Orlando, and I was supposed to stay with friends, and I was supposed to stay with some friends' parents, who I know them. They're really nice people, and they're Vietnamese, and she actually taught me how to make Vietnamese food. She gave me a cooking class one time. It was completely awesome. But I was supposed to stay with them, and they're older. I guess they didn't hear the door all the times I knocked and rang the doorbell. I was like, I'm in Orlando, and I have no place to stay. So I had to drive all the way back to Clint's house. I called Clint at like 10 o'clock at night. I went, dude, I need a place to stay. He's like, all right, come on. So it was fun, though. It was funny. It was fun and funny. Anyways, so I was at this event, and they had like a little DJ guy set up with these speakers on sticks that
Hmm.
self-powered monitors, awful, painfully awful how bad these speakers were. I'm just like, wow, wow. This is what your competition is, Michael.
Mm.
Literally, don't completely suck. That's the bar. If you completely like torn woofers and tweeters that are sizzling is below that. Anything above that, you're doing pretty good. He likes some recommendations on speakers and amplifier brands that he could check out. He'd like to keep the prices to around $600 per pair of speakers. Maybe another $600 for 4 channels of amplification, if possible. So $1,200 for 4 speakers, if that's possible. It's definitely possible.
Hmm.
Obviously, they're self-powered speakers, and there's quite a few of them out there. You know what?
Yeah.
Clint, I think Audio Technica. I want to say it's Audio Technica. I just thought of this just now because his name came out. But he did. He has his Super Bowl party, and he puts a big screen outside, and he had a
Hmm.
couple pairs of these Audio Technica. I'm pretty sure they're Audio Technica. I'll get you the name. Check the show notes for this, Michael. But he had these outside in his backyard, and they were self-powered, and they were ridiculously good. And we were talking about it. He goes, "Man, I barely have them on." He goes, "They go so much louder than this," and it was like I was like going, "How are your neighbors not mad?" He's like, "My neighbors are here," so I guess that's how they weren't mad.
That's the way to do it. Yeah.
But I'll look those up. I'll do it right now while Rob talks to you about his.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, this is not my area of expertise, but I know a little bit about it, and the ones that come up. First of all, Michael's in Canada, I believe he's in Newfoundland, and so I was looking up the places I know. For example, Tom Lee Music, they definitely deal with this kind of stuff. The other one is Long and McQuaid. Now, I don't know exactly where in Newfoundland Michael is. It's not a huge province, but yeah, it's still you got to drive sometimes to get places. I believe Long and McQuaid's only outlet in Newfoundland is in St. John. So I don't know how far away Michael is. But it's places like that you want to go. You want to check out their DJ equipment and their PA systems. The PA systems are the ones that have the big speakers that have a nice big 12 or 15-inch driver and a horn-loaded tweeter, and they're meant to either sit at an angle on the floor, like stage monitors that you'd see at a concert, that allow the musicians that are on the stage to hear themselves, or they can be mounted on those professional large speaker stands, the sort of tripod stands with the big thick metal pole that can actually support that weight. Like Tom says, most of these are self-powered, so you don't really have to worry about external amplification if you don't want to. There's lots of self-powered options, and the brands that I know that offer nice sound quality for affordable prices like you're looking for are Yamaha. Yamaha big time fills in this space, and Behringer. I really like Behringer myself. They produce some like surprisingly linear speakers at very low price points that are really quite nice and accurate sounding. So I really like those two brands. You were asking for brands. Yamaha has some great almost all-in-one packages for like $1,000 that are not just 2 speakers but also come with like a control board that you can plug all your sources into, including like an iPod or an iPad, which a lot of people are using now, right? They just bring all their music, have it stored on an iPad, plug it in via USB, and so Yamaha has these Stage Pass. That's the actual brand name for the packages. So look for a Yamaha Stage Pass. I think that's pretty much got what you want for the price that you want, and might
Yeah, the
not have to
first
go
thing I
further than
thought
that.
of was, do I have my mic on? I do, right? Yeah.
You do.
Uh, Serwin Vega was the first name that came to my mind,
Ah,
but
yeah.
that's not going to be quality. I mean,
Yeah.
they're going to be loud. I don't know how good it's going to sound. It's not Audio Technica. That's not what they are. Because I can't find anything on their website. I'm going to have to call Clint and find out what they are, because they were really, really good. I was
Hmm.
super impressed with them. That's not them either. Jeez. And I mean, they were pretty massive. So I don't, maybe they were really expensive too. But anyways, I'll find out what those are. But yes, I agree with all of Rob's suggestions. The Yamahas in particular are nice because they come in packages, and that's
Yeah.
something that you can do. And I'm seeing a lot. Like the first thing that happened when I searched DJ self-powered speakers. I wonder if I put in Clint DeBoer, something will happen. Sometimes that happens. Let me
Well,
see.
maybe while you're doing that, I will move on to Niels, because Niels and myself, we are birds of a feather. I
Ah,
think I might actually be able to talk nicely and well to Niels because I think he and I have pretty similar tastes when it comes to sound. So Niels is looking for some new speakers. He is a headphone aficionado. He's got several high-end headphone setups. He's using ones like the Audies. I don't know if it's. I've heard it pronounced Audizy. I have no idea if it's pronounced that way. I think it's Audies. Looks weird if it's Audizy. But anyway, whatever the brand name is, they're LCD2 headphones, which are planar magnetic headphones. Really, really nice. He's got some Bear Dynamics DT770s. Those are really well regarded, very linear headphones, good bass on those. And Etymotic HF3s. Etymotic is like as linear as you can get for in-ear headphones. They're very well known for being extremely accurate. So that's the kind of sound that Niels is used to, and it's the kind of sound that I am used to and the kind of sound that I like as well. And so when he's looking for speakers that can equal that same sort of level of clarity and detail and linearity. So I know exactly where you're coming from, Niels. So he wants 5 speakers. He's planning to buy just the front towers and center right now, add the surrounds later. And so the first part of his question is, he's got a pretty small room that he's setting this up, and because of the room and the way it's laid out, his seat, his sofa, pretty much has to be pushed right against the back wall, the wall that's right behind his seat. Can't really be avoided, otherwise there wouldn't be much space to walk or have anything else in the room. And so he's wondering, should he be using diffuse surround speakers, either bipoles or dipoles, or should he be sticking with monopole speakers? Because he wants all 5 speakers to match really nicely. And so figuring out what his surround speakers will be in the future, or if he at least wants to have a diffuse surround speaker option, will inform his choice, because not everything he's looking at has those. I don't know if Tom was paying attention to what I was saying, but do you have any thoughts on that so far?
I agree with everything you just said.
Okay, so Tom was not paying attention to what I was saying. This is tricky. This is tricky because I happen to still be a fan of using diffuse surround speakers, and tons of people really disagree with me on that. I don't like the sensation of having a surround speaker right next to my ear and more or less firing right into my head. I find that distracting from the movie rather than enveloping. And so when you're in this situation where your surround speakers are going to be physically close to you, they have to be, get them up high. He's willing to do that. Get them so they're not aimed directly at your head. He's willing to do that. Right now, he's sort of got a setup where they're firing more or less forward from directly behind him. I would have them to your sides and facing each other above your head. That would be the setup I would go for. Or even angle them backwards so they're kind of bouncing their sound off of the wall behind you. You can do that. It works
Very
quite
Bose
well.
of you.
Yeah, well, it actually works for surround speakers. It's tough. Because the only place he's going to be able to mount bipolar dipoles is on the back wall. The one side of his setup doesn't have a wall beside him. I'm tempted to say I would probably actually go with monopoles, and I would probably have them to your sides, up high, so they're above your head, and aimed directly at each other, and not at your head. Not angled down or anything. I'm kind of tempted to give the advice to go that direction. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts, Tom?
Yeah, you're going to want to buy some sort of adjustable wall mount for these. Something that you can do, you can change the angle, because you're not going to know what you're going to like until it's going to be far too late to do anything about it. I have had speakers on either side of my couch before. It is fine. I've had them pointed directly at me. It's fine. As long as you're pretty much alone on the couch and you sit kind of in the middle, so that there's nobody blocking the sound coming towards you. If it's at ear level, it's I didn't find it that bad. But this is in Australia. We had an L-shaped couch, and over the top of one of the the L, which was against the wall, was the speaker that was pointed kind of towards us, towards the couch. And my wife would sit over there, and she's basically got her ear on that speaker, and she never really said anything about it. I sat there once and went, "Screw this! This is awful. All I hear is this one speaker blaring in my ear, and she's like, "What?" I'm like, why is this not important to you? Because it's certainly important to me.
Yeah.
So I agree with Rob. You're going to want to get them up. I would venture to say that you're going to want to play with that. In this case, the vertical toe end.
Hmm.
You may even want to flip them over to the tweeters on the bottom.
Oh yeah.
You're going to have a lot of different sort of options of doing it. You want to buy whatever you get. You want to have you don't want to just put a shelf up there and hope to God that it works out.
Yeah, I
You
mean one of the issues when you try to put a bipolar or a dipole speaker on the wall that's right behind you and your seat is pushed right up against that wall is that, almost all of the bipolar dipole speakers are that sort of trapezoidal shape. They're angled, and what you end up with is two sides of those, the left and right side, two sides of those are facing right at you because they're angled and they're right behind you, just to your left or right, and they're firing straight into your ears, and then you have the other ones that are firing out to the outsides, and one of them is close to a wall on your left-hand side, and one of them is firing out into a completely open space on your right-hand side, because that's the way Niels' room is set up, and so you have complete mishmash of what those reflections are going to be. One's giving you a strong reflection off that left side wall, the other one's giving you almost no reflection at all because the right side is open. It ends up being kind of a mess, and because I know Niels he's obviously a picky listener. That is very evident
That's
based on the
clear.
he already has.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to be happy with the overall sound. You're going to have this thing where you got really nice speakers up front, and then you get to your surrounds, and it's like, it's kind of a mishmash back there. I think you'll be happier with monopole surrounds that you just set up carefully so that they're not aiming straight into your ears. I think that's the way to go, and that makes it a lot easier because now you don't have to limit yourself. Everybody's got a bookshelf that could
They
serve the
don't
purpose.
always have bookshelves that you can put on a
Near a
swivel
wall.
mount.
Yeah, true.
But you'll have to be careful of that. Now that I don't remember that being part of this question. This is Niels, right?
It is Niels, yes.
Oh, okay. But what about the main speakers? Did you talk about that?
We haven't yet. Yes. So he's in Denmark. Prices over there, availability over there is not as good as it is in the States. Things are more expensive, and he doesn't have as many choices. And he is willing to make the drive to a store or something like that to hear the speakers. He's trying to do the research beforehand. So there's a short list that he can track down in his local area and go and listen to in person before he makes his decision. He's willing to spend a good amount of money on this. But he's trying to, break down this short list. So far, he's looked at reviews, looked at forums, and he's got some KEF reference series that he's interested in, Monitor Audio Gold series, Sonus Faber Venera series, and the Martin Logan Electromotion series. And he's wondering, first of all, do we have any thoughts on those? Maybe he can cross one of them off their list or something if we think one of them is going to be totally unsuitable. Do we have any other suggestions too? Because this is not, he's only limited to these four.
Well,
That's just what he's found.
You have to go listen to Bang & Olufsen. I mean, you're in Denmark. You have to. I'm sorry.
Does he?
It's unpatriotic not to go listen to him. You need to know what your fellow countrymen can do. I'm sorry. I think he has to.
Okay.
That being said, he probably won't have an option. There's probably going to be in all of these hi-fi shops
Every store he
anyway.
goes to will have them anyway. Yeah. So yeah.
My first thought when I saw this was I saw what headphones he was listening to, and these are high-end headphones. If these are planar magnetic headphones, these are not just run-of-the-mill middle grade headphones where I could say, oh, any of those speakers will be fine. You'll love them all. I think he's going to be far more discerning than that, and I think he's going to be used to a specific sound, and he's going to be comparing everything that he hears in a room with what he can get out of one of these high-end headphones.
Mm-hmm.
And while he's willing to spend some cash on this, I think his tastes are going to be very specific.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these speakers are not a lot, but there's a lot of speakers out there that are not going to work. I don't think that you're going to like the KEFs. I think you should listen to them. I don't think you're going to like them. The Sonus Faber, I have never really, Faber or whatever it is, Sonus, I don't even know how to say that one. I don't know how you're going to feel about those. I haven't heard those myself. The two that I think that you're going to probably like the best of the group that you gave us are the Monitor Audios. They have a ribbon tweeter.
Mm-hmm.
and the Martin Logans. And I think Rob disagrees with me, but I think you're going to end up liking those Martin Logans the best out of the group that you gave us. Uh, what you really, I think, are going to end up finding is that you like you want a ribbon. You're going to want a ribbon, no matter
I
what it is,
agree.
ribbon or planar driver or some electrostat. You're going to want something like that. So that seriously limits your options out there. So if I were you and I was planning on making a big trip, I would try to find out every ribbon tweeter speaker that you have the option of hearing and try to listen to all of them, and then whatever else they have in the shop, listen to that too, because you
Yeah,
want to don't say, oh well, Tom says I'm not going to like the Kef, I'm not going to listen to the Kef. Listen to the Kef for sure.
but we're saying if that's the one out of the group that's 400 miles away and all the others are within 50 miles, then
Yeah,
all
don't
right,
drive.
maybe,
Don't do
yeah.
that.
Whereas
Don't.
if it's the monitor audio golds that are farther away than the others, I think it's worth the drive. I think you'd
Yeah,
probably want to hear those. So that's
yeah.
sort of where we're coming from. I mean, like I was saying, I think Niels and I would get along in our hearing, what we prefer. And I mean, this is one of the reasons I ended up with the Ascend Acoustics Sierra speakers with the RAL ribbon tweeter upgrades. That was the sound quality I was looking for. You can't beat the transient response. That is the stops and starts of notes. You can't beat the transient response of a planar driver. Anything that's made out of metal or plastic or paper or whatever, it's just heavier. It has more inertia. It cannot stop on a dime the way a planar driver can. And if you're used to that planar magnetic sound and the linearity of like the Etymotic headphones, I think that's going to be where you end up, because that's where I ended up, and I can base that off my own experience. I don't know if you'd be willing to risk Ascend Acoustics. It's probably not the best idea. They have a big back order right now as it is. You'd be shipping it overseas. I don't think that's really the route you want to go down. You can take
Yeah.
my word for it. They're excellent sounding, so I'll mention it. But the one I'll say to add to your list, I don't know if it will fit in your price range. I don't even know how available they are. But I would look at Focal, specifically their Electra BE series, if you can afford it, because they're very expensive. Focal is a French company. They definitely have shops all over Europe. I don't know what their availability is in Denmark or the prices there, but I really, really like the Electra BE series. They have a beryllium tweeter. It's not a planar, but as far as an actual metal dome tweeter of any sort goes, that's the best one I've heard. And I really, really like Focal's sound overall, so I would add that to your list.
Yeah. You're basically got a couple of days of listening to do. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. Certainly, if you have to make a big drive, after a couple of hours, you're going to get listener fatigue anyways, and you're going to want to do this more than once, I think. Uh, this is a big purchase, and to do it sort of on a whim, you may walk in and say, "Hey, these monitor audios are perfect. I'm fine," and walk out and be absolutely happy. And if so, you hit the jackpot, because I really think you're going to end up wanting to A/B speakers quite a bit before you're really, really sure. And remember too, you're not going to be hearing them in your house. You don't know how they're going to react in your house. And on top of that, if you end up with something like the Martin Logans, I've had demos with Martin Logans, those on-wall ones, where like you press the button and they kind of they come out and point at you and stuff. They were like, these are made for home theater, and they did a big demo and in a big room, and they had everybody sitting real far away, because if you got too close, I'm sure that the sweet spot absolutely disappeared. But they just don't work for home theater. I'm sorry. I mean, they just don't. They are a two. They don't have to be a 2-channel. They can be a 5-channel, but they're a 5-channel for one seat. Maybe
Right.
two. It's just the nature of the beast. The ribbon tweeters will be a little bit better in that respect, or a lot better in that respect. But I think sonically you're going to love those Martin Logans. I don't know that you're going to end up buying them, because I think in the long run you're not going to. Even Martin Logan, if you look at, they have their towers, or their big old cheese graters, and the center channel's got a ribbon tweeter. Even they know
It's a
that you
folded
can't make.
ribbon, though. It's a different design completely.
But still. Yeah. Anyway, so that's our opinions there. All right, how are we doing on time? I want to see what the time is here. An hour and a
Yeah,
half.
yeah,
Jeez,
close it in. Yeah,
run through this thing.
I
Well,
thought
we're
this
gonna
was a
be
short week at first, but yeah, no.
yeah. And then we got off on tangents. Carlos wanted to ask a few more questions about surround listening modes. He's been using the Dolby Pro Logic 2X music mode. He says he likes it because it gives you the option to set the center channel width, which simply sends some of the sounds of the center channel out to the front, left, and right speakers to spread the center channel wider. What are our opinions of using the music mode for the Dolby Pro Logic 2X for movies? I'm okay with that. Is that enough?
I'm okay with it. I usually don't do it myself for movies, but if you like the way that that sounds, if that's what you prefer, I'm okay with that.
I just don't see that there's an issue. It sounds like you need a new center channel though. Uh, Honestly, that's what it sounds like. If you want to spread this wider, it means one of two things: either you've got a big screen and you're trying to, the sound sounds too small coming from there, or more likely, your center channel is really not keeping up. Might need a new center channel. That's just off the cuff. Could be completely off base there. He's discovered that DTS HD master audio bit streams won't work with the Dolby Pro Logic 2X mode on his Denon E400. E4, that's the new ones, right? Isn't it the
It's pretty new. Yeah, I mean they've been replaced with the S just now.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's pretty new.
yeah.
Yeah.
If he switches to his Blu-ray player to output multi-channel PCM, however, the Dolby Pro Logic 2X is available. Again, he likes some clarification on why this is the case, how it all works, and whether he's losing any audio quality by setting PCM instead of DTS HD. Okay, in reverse order. You are not losing any audio quality. Okay,
Yeah.
it's lossless. It's lossless. It's lossless. It's lossless. You didn't. If no matter how you get it there, it's going to be lossless. You're not going to. And all those people who say that there's some sort of difference, they're crazy people. Okay. Why is it the case that the Dolby Pro Logic 2X is not available? I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't know on this one because in the manual, I looked at the E400's manual, and in there it says if you're sending a DTS HD signal, one of the listing modes you should be able to have is DTS HD plus Dolby Pro Logic 2X, either cinema or music. Those should be available. For some reason, the game mode is not available, but that's not the one he's using. So I don't know why it isn't working. According to the manual, it should. The good news is, if the manual's wrong, and I'm assuming it's wrong because otherwise that's crazy, if it's wrong, and the only way to get around this is to set your Blu-ray player to output PCM for the Blu-ray player to do the decoding instead of the receiver, that's fine. You're fine. Didn't lose a thing. So
That's the way I do it anyways.
yeah.
I output PCM anyway, so there you
Mm-hmm.
go. So how does it all work? Magic. It's not working, obviously. This is one of those things that this is why smaller companies can't make receivers. They
Mm-hmm.
try. What they normally end up doing is outsourcing them, but they can't make receivers because receivers are crazy complicated. Okay, and things that they're pretty sure will work won't work, and they don't really know why. If I were you, I would Google the heck out of this, and if you don't find anything, call Denon.
Yeah.
If you still don't find anything, just wait, because eventually enough people will call and they'll put out some sort of firmware fix for it.
That's true. The only other thing I can think of is double check and make sure that the one the disc you noticed this on wasn't an actual 7.1 DTS HD Master Audio soundtrack. Because if it's a 7.1 soundtrack, Dolby Pro Logic 2X will not be available because you're already using 7 speakers.
That's
It's
true. I
already
didn't
in the
think of that.
soundtrack.
Yeah,
So
that's
make
true.
sure that it's a 5.1 DTS HD Master Audio soundtrack, and then according to the manual, Dolby Pro Logic 2X should be available to you. That was the only other thought I had.
Right. All right. His last question is, what listening modes do we use in our systems? Right now, I don't get to use my system. I don't have 7.2. I have 5.2. I have it wired for 7.2, but I don't have speakers back there yet, which I'm going to rectify when I
Mm.
fix this thing. I've decided that. I've decided I'm going to put my bookshelves back there. I'm just going to put a shelf up there and deal with it. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. I think right before right before we took this down, we what's his name? The Dolby guy had passed, and I
Hmm.
switched my
Ray Dolby.
systems. Yeah, I switched my system to Dolby. I think I was using game mode, right?
Yep.
I think that's what I was using was game mode for most everything. Uh, I've played with it. It doesn't really matter that much to me. I tend I tend to really just kind of stick to the Pro Logic and the DTS modes. I tend to stay far, far away from all the rest of the DSPs. The only possible exception would be like a 7-channel stereo or 5-channel stereo
Mm,
when there's like a party something going on. I
right.
just want to view music in here in the home theater. I did that a lot when I was in Jacksonville, where my home theater was part of the rest of the house. And when I had music playing in there, I'd put it on 5-channel stereo and then have the
Sure.
same music playing in a different room through a wireless speaker sort of thing. But that's about it. I don't use DSPs. I don't unless I'm doing some sort of weird testing. I generally don't use direct modes either. I just don't see
Hmm.
any point to it for the exact reasons we talked about earlier. So that's what I do.
All right. I'm a crazy person. I have 11 speakers, so I use DTS Neo X for anything that is surround sound. That will not apply to the vast, vast, vast majority of people listening to this podcast. It applies to almost no one. I think Audioholics ran a poll on their forum of how many speakers are you running, and I believe I was the only one who voted for more than 9. I think was actually the option.
More than nine.
I think I was the only vote. So anyway, yeah, I use DTS Neo X because out of well, that's pretty much the only one that can turn anything into 11 speakers.
Yeah.
I use the game mode for anything that is not actually encoded in DTS Neo X. There's a funny thing. The movie mode or the cinema mode tends to usually add a little bit of reverb, like a little bit. To the surround channels. The music mode usually tends to spread things out, like we were talking about. You got this center channel width that usually kind of spreads things out. The game mode, and this applies to Dolby Pro Logic 2X as well, is the one that tries to keep things as discrete as possible. It tries to keep the sounds as pinpoint precise in each separate channel of your speakers as it can, and I tend to kind of prefer that. That's not really an option on the E400 for most things. You can't engage Dolby Pro Logic 2X game mode on things that are not already 5.1 channel. Anyway, those are the ones I use. In the past, before I had Neo X, I tended to use the THX listening modes and manually had to turn off re-EQ every single time because by default it is always on. They don't give you an option to have it off by default, so I always had to manually turn that off.
You are a
That will
crazy
also not
person.
apply to a lot of people because THX just isn't in a lot of receivers anymore. So prior to that,
I
I
don't
would
know what
always
they're
use the
doing
Dolby
these
Pro Logic
days.
modes. Yeah.
I need to ask somebody. Maybe we should talk to Ray about that. Maybe he knows. Because they really aren't doing the certification anymore. I don't know if it's just
Ah,
people aren't buying it or it's not. Because I think they were doing it because it was selling. It was helping to sell
right.
receivers. But it seems not to be working. Or maybe they just stopped doing it. I don't really know what they're doing. Anyways, I'm going
It's
to
an
skip
added cost.
Robert. We'll do Robert last. Oh, you know what? We got to go back up to the top of this thing because I forgot we have one more person, don't we? Oh, is
Nope,
that Robert
nope.
again?
It was also Robert who I
Oh,
added.
also Robert.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll do Robert last. Complete. Infinite Gary is looking for a 32-inch TV. He doesn't like mirror like super glossy screens like the top Samsung models, and he's looking for. I said 32-inch, right? I'm
Yep.
already getting tired. I mean, it's only 10:41, and I'm starting to fade. Uh, I fell asleep in one of my chairs. I was watching TV last night. My dad came in at like midnight, and I was passed out completely. Like I was doing the kind of sleeping you do when you're so tired
Mm.
you can't even wake up because you're in pain. Sort of. I mean, I
You
had
were
like
like
kind of
Rick Grimes passed out. Yeah.
slumped over. My neck was all tweaked to the side and stuff, and the credits were rolling on some movie I had been on.
See, that's what the podcast would have been if we had recorded last
I
night.
had
So.
I came home and I walked in about 8:45 and I was like, oh yeah, I can probably do a podcast. And I hadn't eaten all day, and I took 2 bites of food and went, oh man, I gotta sit down. And I mean, that's as far as I got. All right. Anyways, Robert. No,
We
wait.
didn't answer Gary.
Infinite Gary. Sorry, Infinite Gary. 32-inch model. Was eyeing. He doesn't like the top of the line Samsungs because they're glossy. Because because I guess he gets reflections wherever he is, and was eyeing the Sony KDL32W650, whatever,
Yep.
32-inch Sony one.
A review. It was a glowing review, so I'm sure that had a hand in it.
Yeah, who did it? Who did the review?
I don't remember offhand.
No,
I've got
whatever.
it here somewhere.
It's
But
gotten
yeah.
positive reviews. Wanted to see if there was know if there's any other 32-inch HD TVs that might be better. I didn't read that review.
Hmm.
This is my opinion of Sony, and I think it's pretty accurate. Sony generally doesn't make crap, unlike a lot of like big name brands that sort of built their name up and they're like, okay, now we can put out stuff and people buy it because it's our name. They don't do that. They do. I mean, they may make some crap, but generally speaking, especially if you put a little bit of money into a Sony product, you're going to get something that's pretty good. And sometimes it'll be the best, but most of the time, at the very least, it's going to be very good. It is usually more expensive than it should be.
Yep.
But that being said, it's not like you're wasting your money. You're spending more than you need to get the same to get that performance, but it's not like you're getting bad performance. So I have no problems with Sony. I am a huge fan of Samsung, and I have never had a problem with the glare. Now I can understand being worried about it. My screen sits. It's not my screen. It's my parents' screen. They have a 60-inch, I think, or 55. I don't know what it is. It's huge, and it's in my main room. And on the wall, directly to the side, is Windows. With like those they're not vinyl. Those blinds. The ones that you spin the little thing and it rotates.
Venetian blinds.
Venetian blinds, but they're not vinyl. They're like wood.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
came with the house, and they're complete crap. I hate them. But anyways, they're nicer than the little metal ones that everybody. I watch it during the day, and when the TV's not on, I see the reflections of the windows in there.
Hmm.
Okay? The TV's on. Never, ever, ever have I noticed it. Okay. Now that being said, Gary, if you're worried about it and it bothers you, hey, fine, get something that's not. Because there are stuff out there that's not, right?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Gary on this one. I really don't like super glossy screens. You kind of don't really have a choice a lot of the time these days. Gary's a little bit different than most folks. I'd venture to say most folks looking for a 32-inch TV really don't care because most of the times it's like like the fourth TV and it's going in the kids' room and they don't care. But Gary does care. He really, really cares. He wants accurate colors. He wants nice deep black levels. It just happens to be a 32-inch is the one he's buying right now, and he's willing to spend money to get a really good one. The Sony, one of the reasons I'm sure he likes it is because according to that review that he linked to, it has really, really accurate colors, and that's a thing I know is really important to Gary. I would suggest you have a look. I'm not certain you're going to love them, but I would suggest having a look at the brand new Vizios that are just coming out now. Vizio has their E series, which should already be available, but their M series, their 2014 M series, is just coming out right now. The way to tell them apart is all of the model numbers end in a B if it's the 2014s. They all ended in an A if it was the 2013s. Why Vizio? First of all, matte screens. The 32-inch has a matte screen on the new M series model. Also, this is the only 32-inch I think I've ever seen. It's full array LED backlighting, so it's not edge lighting like everything else is. Full array back there. And the M series on the 32-inch has some local dimming. It's only 5 zones.
I was going to say, I was about to ask you, it's that 5-zone one, isn't it?
It's the 5-zone one, but it has local dimming, which is kind of remarkable for a 32-inch TV. The big thing to me, though, is having that full array backlight, because that, to me, makes a difference. You can see that. The corners or the edges are always brighter on the edge-lit screens, and I know that's a thing Gary actually cares about. So have a look at the Vizio M series. I'm not sure it's even available right this second, but they're definitely coming out very, very soon.
Sony's just regular old edge-lit?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, that makes me agree with Rob. All right. Robert, he's got a question. Should we do the question first and then do the other thing?
Well, they go hand in hand, so either way, it doesn't matter.
Whatever. Okay. I understand your philosophy about not saying anything negative about equipment if people are happy with it, and I like your overall message that being happy with your system is the main goal, but I think you're not commenting in such areas. Rob's the listener of context. Robert, I'm going to take umbrage with this. Because most people, when they ask us these questions, are asking us with the idea that they want basically a confirmation that they haven't wasted their money. And very few people really, really, really want to have a really honest opinion of what of their purchase. That's my personal opinion. It's been my experience over the years, and I've been doing this podcast. I don't know. I think 7 years now, something like that.
It's like 7 years, man.
And yeah, people rarely want you to tell them that you've wasted your money or they've wasted their money. So, but you are not that person, and I think that's great. Bob, can I call you Bob? No, okay, Robert. Now, his system includes a Denon AVRX 4000 receiver, which he already knows we like, a Denon DBT 3313 UDCI Blu-ray player. God, Denon. Seriously? That's a $1,000 Blu-ray player. I looked it up. It's a universal player. It plays everything, I believe.
Right.
A TiVo HD and a 70-inch Vizio flat panel displays. His speakers are the JBL L820 on walls. With an LC2 center and some commercial Klipsch two-way in-ceiling speakers for the back with aimable tweeters, which I like that idea, and
I don't, but
Rob does
anyway.
not. And some older wall-mounted 5-inch two-way JBL bookshelf speakers for surround left and right. He has a JBL L8400P subwoofer, two of them, I guess. Placed against the front wall under the left and right speakers. Now I'd like to know whether you like my speakers and setup. He does know that already that we like the receiver, which is true. He's a big boy and won't get his feelings hurt. Okay, let's go through this. We like the receiver. The Denon Blu-ray player, the 3313, bunch of stupid letters. Universal player. I got no problems with that. It's a grand. You could get an Oppo with probably. I mean, for the same price.
$500 for the digital one.
For the digital one, right? And they'll have the high end. I didn't look at the back of that thing. Does it have the high end outputs in the back?
The analog outputs are on the expensive one, which I think is like $1,200 now or something.
Is it up to $1,200 now?
Yeah,
I'm talking about
like
the Denon. Does the Denon have a good analog section?
I honestly don't know. I didn't look into that part of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, universal player,
whatever.
it's fine. Yeah.
It's fine. Whatever. TiVo HD, fine. 70-inch Vizio wasn't exactly specific, but I'm sure it's fine. It's huge. Everything else. Now, the all-wall speakers. Okay, first of all, I am never a fan of mixing Klipsch with anything other than Klipsch. Okay? I know it seems like you didn't have much of a choice in this. Maybe you did. Maybe the commercial clips were not already put in there. Maybe you did that on purpose for some reason. But I would thank God they're surround backs, because if any speaker is going to die a lonely death because it never did anything, the surround back speakers are the ones in the home theater that could be broken for years before you notice. I just don't see how they can really melt very well with the JBLs. I'm sure they can be. I mean, it'd be fine in where they are. As far as on-wall speakers go, those may, at least the way the drivers are all laid out, maybe one of the least attractive speakers I've seen in quite some time. Aesthetically, what's the grills on them? They're fine, but this does seem like these are certainly very respectable. I have never heard them, but from a design standpoint, they look like they really tried to maximize the sound quality that was coming off of these things. I mean, what was your take on the speakers?
Yeah, so I mean, I had a crazy on-wall speaker hunt a few years ago there, where I really thought I was going to have an on-wall system, and I wound up with Revel's on walls. So those were the ones I ultimately went for. But I listened to like everything I could find. So again, this is like, I'm hearing these in a demo. It's not my room, and this is one of the big problems because I want to address the whole thing about context, because I get where he's coming from. I get where Robert's coming from, which is that we give the advice on this podcast that when you're reading reviews, it's really good to try and read a number of reviews from that reviewer, even if it's something you're not interested in, to try and get a sense of where that reviewer is coming from. Because ultimately, a review is just an opinion. And if this person is way out to lunch, then you can ignore them, right? Or if they like things that you hate and they love things, or they hate things that you love, then that's probably not the reviewer you're going to look to for advice, unless it's an exact opposite and you're going to be like, all right, he hated it, so I'll love it. So I think what he's looking for is, okay, how much can we listen? How much can I, Robert G. on Facebook, listen to Tom and Rob? How much should I pay attention to them? Because what are their tastes? Do they line up with my own? And that is reasonable to want that kind of context. And I get that. Like Tom said, we have enough experience doing this now where it's like a lot of people want confirmation. And the thing about audio is that there's no set objective right and wrong. In video, we can say, hey, your TV is set up incorrectly. There is a right and wrong when it comes to video. And we can say, you are this far away from being right. We can't do that in audio. That standard doesn't exist. So if you like something, really, really like it, and I say, well, technically you got a big hump here in this part of the frequency range, but okay, there was no actual objective rule to say. So that's why we don't come down real hard on that, because ultimately there is no rule for us to follow. But if you want the context of where we're coming from, I tried to give that a little bit earlier, the setups that I like something that really sounds realistic. That, to me, is the big differentiating factor. Can I get that weird, eerie, hairs stand up on your forearms effect of, wow, that really sounded real. That really did not sound like a speaker. It sounded like real life. I love when that effect happens. It largely depends on the recording, like hugely so. Depends on the recording.
Yeah.
But when it happens, it's really, really cool. And not all speakers can give it to you. It's just not something that all speakers can do. Some of them are incapable of creating that really eerie effect. That's something that I really look for. If that's something that you also like, then you have that context to go on. So it's difficult. I heard the JBLs, my opinion of them that I can remember, because, man, this is a few years ago now, and it was just a demo. My opinion was they sounded good. I didn't end up with them because they were too large, and I didn't like the looks of them. I didn't have any qualms with their sound. I remember Yamo's system. Yamo has a THX system that is very similar in sort of shape and size to these JBL all-walls, and I remember liking the Yamos better. To me, they sounded more integrated. The JBLs sounded a little bit like the highs didn't quite match the mids and the bass. Like and we're talking small degrees here, man. I'm a picky listener, so it sounded like the highs came from a slightly different speaker, if that makes any sense. It wasn't as fully integrated in its sound. It didn't sound completely smooth and even from top to bottom. There was, when it was playing high sounds in these JBLs, when I heard them, it sounded a little bit like crisper than the mid-range. That's what I recall of them. I like the Yamos better because they sounded more smooth and even to me throughout. I have no idea if that makes any sense to Robert or if it gives him any context, but he wanted the full truth, no holdbacks. That was mine. But the big thing is, it's not like I thought they sucked, and I think he kind of wants. I don't know, reading between the lines of what Robert was saying, more direct, we like this or we don't like this. And the problem is, it isn't the extremes. When it comes to audio, it's like, it's small differences. It's subtle. When we say things like, oh, I think you'll maybe like this a little bit better, it's because of your room, your setup. I don't know Robert's room. I might like the JBLs better than the Yamos in his room.
Right, that's true.
The truth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something to consider. I of course have never heard them. Not that I'm aware of. I may have. I've been in so many demo rooms sometimes that, like, I don't know what it was. So I've never heard these ones in question from just the stats, and you can kind of, been doing this as long as I have. You can kind of look at a speaker and go, okay, I can see what they're doing here. I can see why they did it this way. It's an odd-looking speaker, but they definitely did their best to. I think maximize the at least amount of sound that's going to come out of it. So that's something. On-wall speakers are always a compromise. I'm sorry, that's just the case. So it doesn't look like a bad compromise, and I'm sure it sounds pretty good in his room. Now he's got his two JBL L8400P subwoofers at the front of his room. They're like, I don't know if they're operating as speaker stands or they can't be because they're on walls. So basically at the front of his room. And
Yep.
he says, I understand the placement of my subwoofers comes at the expense of evenness in terms of bass response, bass frequencies, and have been thinking of adding 2 more subwoofers to even out my room. Should he consider with his JBLs, pricey but available as refurbs from time to time, or go with something like 2 of the SVS SB2000s? I understand that I'm doing this for even dispersion, not volume. As a former sound, I like things to be reasonably accurate and not boomy. This is what's going to happen, sir.
Well,
You're
first of all,
going
can
to,
I say if we start getting a cut of SVS sales, then go with the SB2000s. No, I'm just
for
kidding.
sure, yes. But this is seriously what's going to happen.
That's never gonna happen.
That's never going to happen. They're just going to start getting checks from SVS. Boy, that would be weird. I think you know what would have happened. They could, you know what they should do? They should send me a check for $1,000. They
Hmm.
would never have to worry about. I just frame it like there it is. Not cashing it. That's a check from SVS for $10,000. Lost their mind. Keep that. It's a collector's edition, first edition. This is what's going to happen. You're going to buy yourself a couple subwoofers from SVS, and then you're going to take those 2 JBLs and sell them because they are never ever going to hold up to those SVS subs. It's never going to happen.
I mean,
Uh,
specs wise, it looks like they should, but
yeah, no,
no.
they're not. It's not even. It's not. It's going to be. It's going to be laughable how bad those subs are going to compare. Uh, and
Wow.
it really is. I'm sorry. It is going to be. You're gonna go through the stages of grief, right? There's going to be denial. There's going to be bargaining. There's going to be anger. There's going to be all this stuff that's going to happen. But in the end, what's going to happen is you're going to go, I have to get rid of these 2 other subs, and then you're going to have to deal with the possibility of buying 4 SVS subs in order to get I understand that there's a reason for your placement. I don't know what your reason is, but there is a reason for it. I have a feeling maybe it's an OCD. I need to have 2 things there and equal. Maybe that's what it is. And if so, I don't really care. Whatever your reasons are, but you are not doing yourself any favors by putting both of your subs in front of your room. You're not doing yourself any favors in your frequency response. Even with the subs that you have now, they could be performing better if you had them better located. And just for kicks and giggles, just relocate them for a little while and see how much you like them, how much better it sounds in there. Relocate those 2. And if you can and do that and you like it and you can live with where their new locations are, you can save yourself some money. Because if not, you're going to end up with 4 SVS subs. And then that's going to cost you what? Like, I don't know, $3,200. Well, they probably give you a discount if you buy
They
4 at
do.
a time.
Yeah, if you're buying, yeah.
So maybe let's say you 3,000 or 3,200, or I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be
2,700,
around there.
2,700 to
Well, no, there's
3,000.
$700 to start individually, and I think it's a $150 discount or something like that if you buy 2 of them. So
Oh,
you're looking
okay.
at like 3,000.
Well, $3,000. Okay. And after our cut, we're 10%, so that's $300 for us.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
Anyhow, yeah. They that's what's going to happen if you end up with those SVS subs. Because I think Rob and I were talking about beforehand, and we did a little bit of research on those subs. And while the specs look very good, in reality, they roll off way before the SVS subs even really start getting cooking. So, what did you say, Rob? Like 45 hertz or something?
Like 45, 50 hertz, they start to roll off, and the review I could find said they were doing at like 16 to 18 dB per octave, which means that it's not just because the JBL subs are sealed. It means they have a first order low high pass filter being applied there, and that would be to protect the driver. Make sure that it doesn't bottom out. So the SVS subs just objectively can play lower and louder. Would they match up well? If you keep everything very reasonable in terms of output, but at some point the SVS subs are going to be playing down low in the 20 and 30 hertz frequencies where the JBLs are not, and then now you're back to 2 subs at those frequencies. So
And if you
I
do what I
don't know
think
if
you're
that would
going
be
to
the
do,
best
which
match.
is put the 2 SVS subs up front, or maybe you'll keep maybe get the two JBLs up front and put the two
Right.
SVSs in back. Well, then now at those frequencies you've got that unevenness again,
Yeah.
and
You, you, you
you're
won't
shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, you won't be locating it. It's not like it's going to sound like the sound
No.
shifted from the front of the room to the back of the room. At those frequencies, the sound waves are way too long for that to happen. So that's not the worry. But it's just if the goal was I'm going to add two more, have four subs, and have very even uniform bass across all my seats, that might not happen because those JBLs simply are not playing down at 20 hertz. They might be moving a little, but they're really, really quiet by the time they get down there.
Yeah. They're moving a little, but this is what they're saying. Oh my God, it's so low.
We better finish here, man. We're going to crack 2 hours. It's
Are we
done.
really?
It's over.
Oh,
We're
look
going
at that.
to.
38. Okay.
Uh,
I can't. Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to crack 2 hours. All right. So you can contact us at Tom at AV Rant, Rob at AV Rant, avrant.com, the website, facebook.com/AV Rant podcast. We did do all of our questions, so send in your questions. So give us some more questions to deal with next week. I guess if you really want some honest feedback about your stuff, send us pictures and your specifics about your display, about your setup, and I'll be happy to rip in a new one if I feel like it's up for it. Believe me, it's no skin off my team. On Twitter at First Reflect for Rob or at AVRant_Tom for me. I guess that's pretty much it. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
I will start the hangout. I cannot promise I will hang out very long for the hangout. I am in a considerable amount of pain right now because I climbed really hard tonight and I want to go to sleep. So, guys, I'll start the thing in just a second. Bye.